Hi, I'm Claire Mitchell, QC. Welcome to the Witches of Scotland podcast. I'm a lawyer who specialises in miscarriage of justice cases, and we're bringing you this podcast because we want to tell you about the women who were accused, prosecuted, convicted, and ultimately executed as witches in Scotland.
I'm Zoe Venditozzi, and I'm a writer who's always had an interest in the witches, and I feel that this dark mark against Scotland needs a reckoning.
The campaign Witches of Scotland wants three things. Firstly, a pardon for all those convicted of witchcraft. Secondly, an apology for all those who were accused as witches. And finally, a national monument in recognition of all those who are affected by this terrible miscarriage of justice.
Over the forthcoming weeks, we'll be talking to a whole host of experts about the history and the modern day connections to the Witches of Scotland. Hello and welcome to the Witches of Scotland podcast. Rather unbelievably, she says for many, many times, this is episode 63 of 6 today. And we've got an absolute cracker of a guest, somebody we've had on before and no doubt we'll have on again, but we'll get on to that later. How are you today, Claire?
Yeah, I'm all good. Similarly, surprised episode 63, but I have been looking up my little book of people to contact, and Zoe, I think we're probably going to make it to episode 100.
Holy Mary, that's a lot of episodes.
Hang
on. Let me just do my mental maths. If we're on 63 today, then that means 37 more episodes to record.
Yeah.
Claire, that's more than 50% of what we've done already.
We should
do it still.
It's not more than 50%, is it?
Of what? Well, I'm an English teacher, so please forgive me. I'm not numbers. But if we're on episode 63 and we're going to be able to do another 37, then 37 is more than half of 63. So it's another 50% of what we've already recorded.
Oh, I see, it's already fit. I was like, it's 50% overall, and my very, very basic maths brain was going, but 50% would be 50.
Claire, it's really concerning that the areas that you and I both work in, our extremely limited understanding of very basic maths.
Don't do
maths. It's arithmetic. It's just counting, Claire.
Yeah, for me, it's
a tiny bit of percentages.
For me, it's absolutely both. But see, when I am like stressed out, I sometimes dream that someone's come to me and said, "We've done your maths exam again, and we've done your arithmetic exam again, and it turns out you didn't pass, so you didn't get the grades to go to university, so that's just, we're taking it back." And I'm going, but
did you have to have maths to get into university?
I don't know. I think so. I think maths and English are...
I'm so glad that I'm just that slight bit younger than you when things had changed. We didn't do arithmetic at school. It was just all one sort of conglomeration of just a horrific period of all the maths.
Not only am I bad at maths, but I'm old too. Thanks very much. Shall we just...
I'm not saying you're old. I'm saying you're older, very slightly, than me, in the way of a wise woman. Let's pretend that's what I'm saying. Let's move on.
The way you bring it round to wise women.
Yes, exactly. Maths aside, Claire, because maths should always be to the side. No offence to those amongst us who are really good at maths. It's obviously very important. Somebody has to be able to count stuff. That's not our area, though. That's just not our skill set.
No. I think it would be hilarious if we did a maths podcast.
My God, it'd be so boring. No, everybody would just go, how could they be so stupid?
No, it won't, because idiocy is quite entertaining. People would tune in each week to see us try and get our little bare brains round maths exams.
The thing is, I quite liked algebra at school, but that's puzzle. That's like I quite like things like that. We have to work out. It's a kind of a competition against yourself. So I don't mind that.
Is that the one where you work out the size of a square?
Oh my God, Claire, are you serious?
Uh-huh.
That's really bad.
I'm so sorry.
Algebra is the one with the letters and the numbers, where the letters stand for the number. And then you have to go, like x4 equals 13. What does... I don't think that'd work, actually.
My brain just...
Anyway, you have to work out what the letter is.
Yeah, no,
I'm not talking about high-level algebra here. I'm talking about very, very basic algebra. Like, very basic.
Welcome to very basic algebra. At the back of my head, I'm just thinking, why? Why do we need to know this? I don't see the point.
I think it's because sometimes, Claire, you need to work out a thing that you don't know what the answer is, and then you have to work it out from the information around it.
Ironically, I actually spend most of my life doing that in the day job.
Exactly. And so do I. It's just noted in a different way. I think we should move on because we're losing listeners by the measurement of time. Okay, so our maths deficiency aside,
yes,
what has been going on in the news, Claire?
I love how that segue just wasn't a segue at all. It was just brutally stuck in there.
Quickly, let's move on, because honestly, we're just digging ourselves into a hole that we can't measure in either depth or time or energy output. Kilojoules.
Okay, we've become hysterical in the news.
What's happened to
this week? We've got it's prospective things we're telling you about. 3 things. The first thing,
yes,
I suppose, in the news, we are in the news this month because the Scots magazine, that institution, that the magazine that's taken by the diaspora far and wide and also at home, they have got a really lovely article in this month, and it's their spooky episodes. But I'm really, really pleased to say that they've made it absolutely clear that this isn't a spooky topic.
It's actually a really, really good article. It's really interesting because it reflects on the facts and the history and the modern day relevance and what's happening with the campaign. And it's a really, really good article.
Yeah, so that's in the news this week. What else is in the news are 2 prospective things, and we've mentioned these before, but now we've got a bit more details. The first of them is that the People's Memorial is going to be up on the 22nd of October. Now, the memorial unveiling is going to be on Tweed Green, and they tell us that's at the Priorford Bridge end. So the time is 10:45 for 11 a.m. for the unveiling. There's going to be a historical overview. There's going to be a blessing. I think a minister's going to come and, in fact, reflect upon the history of witchcraft trials. There's going to be music and light refreshments. If you go to @PeoplesWitch, you'll be able to see more information there. And also, the local news there has done a huge double-page spread on it. So I'm really hoping a lot of people from the local community turn up. And I'm going to be down there that day, Zoe, because we have to actually split our time on that particular day. It's like they're getting ant but not deck. Or deck.
I know it's unfortunate because we do like to go to things together, and I would have really liked to have gone to People's, but it's good that you're going.
And me too with the next event, which is you're going where?
Yes. So I'm going up to Forfar on the same day, and it's about myth busting about the Forfar witch trials. It was ticketed and it's sold out now, but I know that this is the beginning of a series of different events where the researchers there have found some really interesting stuff out. I think there's going to be an exhibition, and there's going to be various things that people can go along to. And I think some of it will probably be online as well. So that'll be really interesting. So I'm going to go to Forfar while you go down to People's.
Cool. That's the start of more things to come. Well, I think that's all that we have. We do have some more stuff in the news, but we thought it was better to maybe speak about it next time. Is that right, Zoe?
Yes. And I think also we should say, as a kind of a be alert, because obviously we're leading up to Halloween, and we know that this is the time of the year when all sorts of absolute nonsense gets written and put out about witches and those accused of witchcraft and all that sort of side of things. And it's quite annoying. I do hope in my heart that because there's so much more truth and actual information available now, just sort of in the public eye and in the culture, that there is a bit more of a challenge made to some of the sort of the lazy ideas about, the hooked noses and the green skin and all that kind of side of things. So I am hopeful, but obviously there'll be lots of rubbish. But what's quite good though is now that there are tons and tons of people who we've engaged with as listeners, who've listened to all the fabulous experts that we've had on, that are now very happily equipped with the truth and the facts, so they can go out and about and myth bust in their local lives. So please carry on the good work, listeners. And now we remember women, not witches. Today, we've got quite a lot of detail, which is good. So we're going to start off first with a story from the south of Scotland, and that is with Helen Kirkpatrick. This was in 1706, a year before the Act of Union of Scotland and England. She was accused of maleficium by the local minister. Minister Peter Ray requested her to give him back his health. He also appears to have scratched her on the forehead in order to identify her as a witch. She actually raised a counter-slander case, and the records Pen Point Presbytery ones record that she was, and this is a quote, she was sentenced to be put out of bounds, but there the volume ends. The next volume starts at 1714, so the years following her accusation are actually missing, so we don't know what happened there. It's quite interesting, though, the idea that she was put out. So do we mean by that, Claire, that she was sent away from where she came from, sent from her village?
I reckon so. That sounds like banishment to me. What I've chosen today are people from north, south, east and west at the extreme ends of the country. So this was the southernmost person I could find on the interactive witch map that was accused of witchcraft. So it may even been that after she was banished, she went down south.
Right, yeah. Oh, awful. Just the thought of being banished.
Yeah.
You know, the idea, I mean, this isn't, you know, obviously there was no way of then kind of researching ahead or settling yourself, or you would just be thrown out with what little you had, if anything, and then having to try and make your way. And you would hope the person had family or something somewhere, but probably not.
Well, there was no safety net. That's the thing.
No.
You know, there was nowhere for you to think, oh, I'll just go there. And as we've spoken about before, you know, a woman of any age turning up new to a village, people are going to think, why is she left wherever she's been? And these sorts of stories, and the fact that she's an outsider and doesn't have contacts, it was going to be a difficult life.
And I wonder how far people needed to go, you know, to move to an area where people didn't know about the story of what they'd been accused of and the place they'd been thrown out of. I mean, like, you know, I wonder if you had to travel like many villages or towns over, or if a couple of villages would be enough.
I imagine it would be quite a few. But again, the difficulty with that is, even if you've gone somewhere completely new, if you're a woman in your 40s that just turns up by herself in a village, well, the first question is, why? Why are you here?
Who are you? Yeah. What are you doing here? Yeah, you'd immediately be suspicious, I would imagine.
It wouldn't be long before someone said, oh, isn't that the woman who we heard about from X village? Somebody had been there. You know, I mean, I don't suppose people, you know, were very mobile in those days, but I imagine gossip still was. That's the way gossip works.
Yeah.
Well, moving on now, this is one of the westernmost people we could find accused of witchcraft. And on the 11th of June, 1616, we know that Marion Taylor was accused of witchcraft. We know about Marion that she was married, and one of the reasons we know about the marriage was, as part of the accusation, she was accused of having sex with her sister's husband and having a baby from that relationship. And she was accused, as well as being a witch, of causing illness by being a witch. Now, sadly, that's all we know about Marion Taylor, but I don't imagine it is too difficult to work out why someone was being called a witch there, or where the accusation had come from. So the records sadly don't show what happened to Marion. We just know that on that day, at that time, she was accused of witchcraft, and we know nothing else about her, nor indeed about her paramour or the child from that relationship.
Okay, and then moving on to the east, we've got a woman called Janet Miller, who was accused in 1658 of witchcraft. And the ditty, so that, Claire, can you describe again what a ditty means?
So a ditty is like a indictment of today's day, or a complaint. It's where the state sets out the charges against you that you're to meet, so you know what it is that you're being accused of. So in the modern day, people usually receive complaints through the door. They get a letter from the Crown Office saying, this is the charge against you, come to court at this time and date. Or sometimes when it's much more serious matters, they receive an indictment. Police would serve an indictment on you. Or you would also get that through the post as well sometimes.
And do we use the word ditty still, or is that an old-fashioned word?
No, that's an old-fashioned word. The first time I heard the expression ditty was, in fact, when I was looking at some of the earliest witchcraft trials, and I couldn't quite work out what was going on, but I reckon from the sense about it, it was something to do with that. And then later, it was right. It's basically the indictment against you.
Okay. All right. So the ditty that was put against Janet Miller said that she was convened, which means convened, met with the devil in her dream. She confessed to having a familiar, but it was not described as an animal, and it could have been a familiar spirit. She claimed that the devil gave her power to heal. After her husband possibly died, she worried about her livelihood, and that's when the devil came to her. Again, with many of these things, they're really patchy, so you have to do a little bit of kind of putting two and two together. The devil allowed her to hear the threatenings of other witches and see the diseases at a great distance. That's quite interesting. So what does it mean by that? That she had like sort of like an omniscience about what was happening kind of across the land, that she could hear what other witches were doing and she could see what diseases that they were putting on
It could
people.
be. I wondered whether or not that was something like, she knew that there was an illness in another village and that proved to be true or something.
Yeah, and that she was connected in some way, so she knew of it, and she'd only have that information if she was kind of, part of this diabolical kind of network.
Yes.
Her draft ditty shows that she was a recognised healer who travelled far and wide. Her witchcraft reputation seems to have come from failed healing attempts, and because she told people to keep her cures from the ministers. That's really interesting, because she's really kind of like an example of what people stereotype of what an accused witch would be. A wise woman who was traveling and trying to help people, and when things went wrong, she got the blame. There's also lots of stuff about fairies in her story. The church and others might have been threatened by her advice to her patients to keep her cures a secret. So this may have led people to believe that what she was doing was wrong. And also, I suppose, if you're saying keep this from the ministers, not only is it sort of implying that it's wrong, whatever you're doing, that it needs to be kept a secret, but it might threaten their power if there's somebody going about doing something that's different to what they're doing. It's an interesting one, that one, isn't it? So she claimed that non-natural beings came to her as her husband, and also as a 40-year-old man with flaxen hair and middle stature. She was said to have the devil's mark on her back, and she had renounced her baptism while drinking to the devil. So she's saying then that by non-natural beings, I suppose that's the devil, came to her in the form of her husband who was dead, and came to her in the form of a 40-year-old man and spoke to her. There's always this kind of implication of sort of sexual congress as well, isn't there?
Isn't there? Yeah. I mean, to me, this drew my eye because of the very specificness of the fact that an unnatural being, inverted commas, so the devil or some evil spirit came to her in the form of a 40-year-old man with flaxen hair and middle stature, which I presume is just kind of like, of ordinary height or weight, or something like that.
Some blonde guy just turned up.
Yeah, and said, "Hello, I'm the devil."
Yeah, weird, eh? So fox tree leaves, aka foxglove, was used to cure sickness. The consultant was told to take her mother to a certain place, wash her and use fox tree leaves, and leave the sickness at the place where she got it. So these are words that are describing the actions that Janet supposedly did. This was in her accusation. She diagnosed an illness as possibly related to the fairies having taken his tongue. And if this was true, if the fairies had taken his tongue, she couldn't be of any help to him. But he should try fox tree leaves and southerly running water. She also gripped a child and told them to keep it close and away from the minister. So again, if the minister heard that, that's obviously going to be a problem for her. She diagnosed another child with what's called fairy blast. I wonder if that's like fairy. I'm not sure. She did a cure where the victim had to sit between 3 fires. There was a ritual with smoke and fire to get a man out of a witch's grip. Again, told to keep it close, and especially from the minister. Advised to keep the Bible near for a cure for distemper. I mean, that's odd, isn't it? If she was working with the devil, why would she have the Bible as part of her cures? It's odd. That's sort of counterintuitive. She said that a man became ill after digging up a thorn tree. She diagnosed bewitchings as caused by Kirkcudbright and Dumfries witches. So she herself accused other women of being witches, and she told the victims to get 3, what's described as 3 stoppings of straw from the witch's roof and burn them. So it's a bit of a confused narrative, isn't it? Like she's accused of working with the devil, and yet she is denouncing other women as being witches, and she's advising on how to deal with another witch's bewitching. It's a confusing one, that, isn't it, really?
It is. And I think because it is confusing for us now in the modern age to think about the difference between witches and what was called at the time charmers. So it looks as if what she was living as and working as was a charmer. She was trying to help people cure ails, etc. But in her job, she wasn't trying to claim that she was getting power from the devil to do that, to do harm. But I think some of these are what she said to people, and then some of these are what people are saying about her that she has done. So it's a mixed bag of, was she doing charms for people to try and get them away from witches' curses? That seems to be the case in some of them, but obviously because she did that, she came under, if you'll pardon the pun, the spell of the minister, who then thought, well, no, you're actually a witch yourself.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. And I think she's a really interesting case to look at because she sort of fits so many of the tropes that we have of what somebody was that was accused, and sort of encapsulates the confusion and the sort of the oddness of the stories of a lot of these poor people that were accused.
I did actually think her story might be in the report done by the Royal College of Nursing. Remember Dr. Nicola Ring? Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Professor Nicola Ring now,
Yeah.
and her colleagues, where they got the names of all the people from the Survey of Scottish Witchcraft that had things to do with healing. And there might be more information on her in that report. So that report, there's only been a short sort of précis of that report done, but in time to come, there will be a fuller report, and hopefully people will read more about her there. We move north now, Zoe, the furthest north, to Scalloway in Shetland in 1708. So that was really quite a late date for witchcraft accusations. And it was unfortunate members of the one family, 3 members of the one family called the Ratters, Elizabeth, Andrew and Christian. They themselves were from Scalloway in Shetland. The Ratter family, it's said in the Survey of Scottish Witchcraft, appears to have been a very unpopular family, asking for alms and arguing. In Andrew's case, the list of harms done was more extensive than that of his sisters. So these are always the saddest ones, I think, Zoe, when people are destitute, looking for assistance. And no doubt, they say they were arguing with people. No doubt they lived just very, very brutal, difficult lives trying to scrape by. And they would be going and asking people for help. And then if the people didn't give help and something went wrong to them, it would be attributed to the Ratters that they had put a spell on them. Andrew was accused of sharing a drink with another man at the peat cutting, and later that man took ill. There were also animals that took ill or were born dead after having arguments with the family. He was refused butter, asking for butter, and a cow died later. And it said he was given alms in the form of some bread, which he threw into a fire, and the families then had no calves born alive. So it's just desperately sad that there were people just asking for help, and either given help or not given help, bad things were still attributed to what they were doing.
Yeah.
It's the most distressing for me is people who are in this destitute state and only trying to get help and find themselves being accused of witchcraft. We understand that the presbytery in Scalloway did all the investigation of the case. They questioned both the witnesses and the suspects. They then referred the matters to Mr. John Mitchell-Stewart of Shetland as the investigator, possibly even the procurator. I'm not sure how they prosecuted trials in Shetland at that time. But basically, the presbytery got all the information together, handed it over to John Mitchell-Stewart of Shetland, and then there are no further details. So sadly, we don't know what happened to the Ratters as a family.
It's so patchy, isn't it? It's a real frustration. But I mean, there are people, as we've said, who we know are investigating across Scotland that are doing deep dives into archives held in different locations. So it does seem to be that sometimes people have a little scrap of information like this, and then they're sometimes able to find more information. And in fact, our guest today is one of those people that are working really hard in their local area to find out information. And we've had her on before, and I'm really excited to be introducing today for a second episode episode with us, and I don't think that this will be the last time we have her on either, is Judith Langlands-Scott, who is an independent researcher who's looking very closely at what happened in Forfar. And she's going to tell us in this episode all about what she's discovered and some of the work that she's going on to do next.
Yeah, and if you want to look back to find out her earlier episode, the earlier episode you can have a look at is episode 30.
Hi there, Judith. It's so wonderful to have you back on the Witches of Scotland podcast, one of our very favourite guests. So thank you so much for coming back on again.
Oh, I'm so excited. You know me, I'm almost too excited. Lovely to see you.
Since we last spoke to you, you have been a very busy bee, have you not?
I have.
You have been on the telly box and have been beamed all around the world wherever the BBC goes, because you did some filming with a quite well-known historian. Would you like to tell us a bit about that?
Oh, a wee bit well-known historian. Yes, Lucy Worsley. It was the best thing ever. It's the most fun that I've ever had.
Oh,
what a day. It's just great fun.
So she was doing a programme about the witch trials, particularly in Scotland. And their production company got in touch with us as part of their research and said, you know, is there anybody that you would recommend? And we, of course, immediately said, Judith. She's so interesting and she's doing really interesting stuff and like literally getting in there and digging up new stuff, and would be such an engaging guest. So we were so happy to see that you got interviewed and that you ended up on the show, and you were marvellous, Judith.
You were.
Thank you. I was just so touched that you'd even thought of me, little old me. You know, I wasn't even embarrassed by my 75 chins on that TV programme. I was just, you know, normally I am, but it was like, no, this is the least nervous I've ever been in my life, because I was just going on to talk about my stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. You knew what you were talking about. You're an expert in your field. You looked fantastic. You looked commanding in terms of what you were talking about. And what's more, Lucy looked really engaged with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you see, during the breaks in the filming, so we filmed the whole day here at my house, and they'd have breaks in filming to go and do something else. And we would start talking about things, and then they would come back and they would go, well, you know, can we maybe start up again? And you would think, oh, well, wait a minute. We were discussing, you know, James I and his childhood, and we haven't got time to film. We're talking about this. It was a total geek fest.
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that Lucy off screen is as keen as she is on.
She is fantastic.
What in particular made it to the cut for the final programme? What did you end up then using for the show?
Yeah, it was a bit about, it was Treasury documents and showing that actually on the surface of it, they look like they're just itemising, you know, it's just an itemised bill. But if you know what you're looking for, then the fact that, the women accused of witchcraft are getting £8 of candles bought, but the murderers in the other cell, the male murderers, they're only getting one. So why have they got all these candles? And lots of things like that. I found John Kincaid in there, for example, you know, the famous witch pricker. I will actually show you a little note that I have, because I don't know if you can read it.
We can read it.
I can't say it.
You can't say it. So Claire, so for the benefit of the court, Judith has just held up a document that she has a post-it note on that describes Kincaid in a rather vernacular manner for the negative.
Yes.
I think we'll go with less than flattering term.
Less than flattering, that's right. So,
Judith, why have you described Kincaid in that way for those that don't know who Kincaid is or was?
I just cannot. I'm reigning in my fury, okay? John Kincaid was from Tranent, and he styled himself as a witch pricker. So, you know, he could come around with his big pins and he could torture women, because witch pricking sounds fairly innocuous, but it really wasn't. And he could, you know, he'd torture them with these pins and all the rest of it. And I describe him as a veteran witch pricker. That's the less vernacular term, because he was witch pricking in the cases in the late 1640s. And then here he is, still in 1661, 62, still at it. He's earning £6 per witch he pricks.
Is that a lot of money?
That's a lot of money, because for a skilled labourer a year's wages were around about £43.
Oof.
Yeah, so he's getting £6 a time.
Wow.
And then he doesn't have any expenses because all his expenses are covered. And he's going about the country, you know, being revered by all of these people that, you know, bailies and people like that welcome them into the town with his retinue, and he's being paid £6 a time. So if he's coming to your town and he's pricking, you know, 15 witches in one night, you know, is it just per witch or is it, you know, per day? I don't know exactly. So it's about 6 months after he'd been in Forfar, and his findings had led to the executions of several women in the town. He is in Edinburgh. He's in the courts in Edinburgh, and he is charged with fraud and found guilty of fraud. But he doesn't get executed because although we'd say he's guilty of murder, he's an accessory to murder. At the time, he's just guilty of fraud, and they let him off because he's an old man by that time. He's very old, very old. But 6 months earlier, he'd been, you know, in fine fettle on a horse from Edinburgh to Forfar.
It's amazing how well you can be if you need to gallop off to get £6 per witch.
Oh, amazing, amazing. So he is, I can't stand the man for what he did. I mean, he's responsible for hundreds of executions.
Is he very involved in Forfar then? Your area of research?
Yeah, well, for a short period of time, he was involved in September 1661. And then he was given the freedom of the borough and a big ceremony and presented with his Burgess ticket, you know, and so it was a case of thank you very much and oh, you're marvellous, and a big meal and celebration and everyone's in the street. He's presented with his Burgess ticket and off he goes.
And you're also an area in Forfar that had Christian Caldwell.
Yes.
A witch pricker. That's we've covered that story just recently.
That's right. Now, I didn't really know of her because she's involved in the Isabel Gowdy trial in 1662 up in Aldern. So I didn't know much about her. I only knew that she was a female impersonating a male so that she could be a witch pricker. Bizarre. But anyway, she claimed to be a bailie from Forfar called John Dixon. The Dixons and the Guthries are everywhere in Forfar when you look through the documents. So John Dixon was the son of Charles Dixon. Charles Dixon was our provost at one point. He was a bailie in Forfar. So she just must have used his name.
Presumably because there's no real connection between places. It would be so much more easy to just take a name and say I'm that person, and people go, oh yeah, we've heard of that person before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or we know who that person's father is, and that's how you're able to do it.
Yeah, that's what she must have done, because it must have been a case of, oh yeah, somebody somewhere is going to know the Dixon family in Forfar, because generation after generation there are bailies and provosts and things like that. So somebody's probably heard about it somewhere. Oh yeah, that's right, there is a Dixon family in Forfar. And she's used that.
That's a story we'll need to do a deep dive into at some point in the future. But on the last occasion when you were with us, Judith, you left us, and listeners might want to go back to the earlier episode on Witches of Forfar and have a listen to it again. You left us on a cliffhanger. Can you tell us what the cliffhanger was?
I did, because I was about to talk about one of the most interesting confessions. I hate saying confessions, you know that I'm saying it with the little
inverted commas.
In Scottish witch history, and in fact possibly in all of witch history. And it involves a lady, a woman called Isabel Smith. Well, it's interesting for various reasons, but one of the reasons is that it actually says the confession of Isabel Smith, which, drawn from her mouth and witnessed by the minister, frequently repeated before the undersubscribed witness, with tears and cries for mercy and the help of their prayers. So I think that gives an indication that she's being tortured. She's certainly in a lot of distress. But it also says that these words, though probably true, these presumptions, though she has not confessed them, are many of them probably true because they followed immediately upon some act of hers. So it's telling you that this confession, these are not her words. And we've got it here in black and white. So she has not confessed them, but they're probably true.
So what they're saying there is, upon acts, what they're saying is things have happened, ascribing to her as witchcraft because she has some connection with them, but she's not actually confessed to these, but we're writing them down as confessions anyway.
Well, yes, and also I thought, the bit about them being probably true because they followed immediately upon some acts of hers. I think that could even be interpreted as, okay, she didn't say these words, but the minister put them to her, and she either whimpered or she nodded her head or gave some kind of action, physical action.
Well, that makes more sense.
So it could be both. It could be both.
Do we know anything, before we hear a bit more about her confession, do we know anything about Isabel herself, just so the listeners can find out?
Yeah, we know that she was old, and that because it says she confessed to adultery 20 years ago with a man who is now dead, hopefully nothing to do with the adultery. So we know that she's probably old, and she's described as being old in some of the other confessions. She did the usual, she supposedly confessed to meeting with the devil and, being in some kind of covenant with him and all of this stuff. So she's old and she's a widow and she's obviously got no one to speak for her. And she lives in Forfar and she's quite disagreeable. She's like the rest of the women. She's not conforming, she's a quarrelsome dame, yeah. And she hangs about with all of the other 13 that are confused in this batch. And she, with the same as them, she drinks and she likes a wee dance in the graveyard or on a hill somewhere, and she's in with a bad crowd maybe. And she does things, she's typically accused of things like, making Andrew Nichol's cow stop producing milk, and she looks at people or she blows on someone and he dies. So she's generally accused of, I think, being unpleasant and being in with this bad crowd and not being godly. So it's back to this idea that the God exists. The people who are trying her absolutely believe God exists and the devil exists. So if you are not godly, then you're in with the devil. And she fits that category because we'd think, very probably not going to church. So she's just an old woman. She's a wee old woman. She's a widow. She's not got any money. She finds herself.
She's a woman at the very least in her 40s, which would have been old age at the time. And
Absolutely.
She still likes drinking and dancing. I'm thinking, I can see parallels here.
Good on her. The more you read about these women, now sometimes you read things about them and you think, yeah, probably wouldn't have liked you very much. But there are people that you read about and you just think, well, I'd rather been hanging about with you, to be honest.
As my Carol likes to describe them, they're living their best life.
They are living their best lives. As in, can you imagine this strict Presbyterian regime they're living under, which was what was going on in Forfar, because we had a very zealous minister, Alexander Robertson. And so, you're not allowed to have music anymore. You're not allowed to dance. You shouldn't be drinking. You certainly shouldn't be cavorting with men if you're a single woman. All of these things, they were doing all of them, but they weren't crimes in our society, in our day, but they're crimes back then.
So we know a wee bit about her. What is it about these confessions then that you see makes them probably the most interesting confessions in the whole of the witchcraft trials?
Well, I think the fact that they give some kind of idea that she was being tortured, by that she says through, cries and prayers for help and all the rest of it. The fact that it mentions, this is one of the things I haven't told you about yet, but it mentions the 4 Sabbats, the 4 witches' Sabbats. Now, you don't usually get that in confessions. So it mentions Candlemas, which is the pagan Imbolc, which is basically that's the festival for the start of spring, the new shoots coming through. Then it mentions Rood Day, and in Scotland that is Beltane. That's the 1st of May. So you've got that one, that's the start of summer. Then you have Lamb's Mass, or Lammas, which is usually dedicated to the god Lu, and that is the first harvest in autumn. Then you've got Hallowmas, which is October, obviously, and that's the start of winter. So it mentions that her meetings with the devil were every quarter, and that's the 4 witches' Sabbats. So I have been told that these don't appear they're not normal to appear in confessions.
Can I ask about the witches' Sabbath? Now, we know that the people at the time there wasn't like a thriving witch community, like there is now.
Yes.
Like online
Yes.
stuff, there is a witch community and people celebrate, and those are important dates. Those dates that you've identified as the witch dates, were those dates that were celebrated at the time by the community, do you think?
Well, they would have been celebrated, but not as pagan festivals. If you're thinking Candlemas, then that's Catholicism. And if you're thinking Rood Mass, and then you've got Lamb Mass, and then you've got Hallowmas. So you're thinking, okay, sounds a bit Catholic to me.
Right.
But also these imply to me that these are imported by someone who's been doing some reading.
So you think they're putting stuff to her, she's like nodding her head and whimpering or confessing to it, but more importantly, you think this knowledge about those dates are being given to her, fed to her to confess to?
Absolutely. I think somebody thinks they're awfully clever and they've been doing some reading, and they possibly want people there to know they've been doing some, I know all about this, and look, and they ask these questions.
So they would be putting it to her. They wouldn't be saying, when did you meet the devil? You'd be saying, we know you met the devil in Candlemas, is that right? And
yes.
She said yes. And then put down, admitted to meeting the devil on that date.
Yes, we knew it.
The devil seems very organised in these meetings, scheduling for a year.
Exactly, and they all managed to
put them in spiral facts or whatever the devil does to those dates.
Yeah. So the information in this small confession is amazing, and then the thing that's right at the end, it's almost a postscript, and it's these presumptions, though she's not confessed them, are many of them probably true, because they followed immediately upon some act of hers. You don't find that in confessions, that it says she never said them. She never said this. This is called her confession, but look, she didn't say any of the stuff. But it's probably true. So it's quite incredible. And when you see the original of this, it's just a little scrap of paper. The handwriting is so small on these things because paper was so expensive. And it is paper, it's not vellum or anything like that. And this is just on a little scrap of paper. So quite incredible to contain that much information.
And can you give us some details about, is there anything in particular that interested you that she said she confessed to? I mean, there's the usual things about meeting the devil, dancing with the devil, you would forsake your baptism. Is there anything else that she did?
All of that's in there. All of that's, standard. It's pretty much standard.
Standard confession fare.
It's she cursed somebody's cow and the cow's died. She murdered this bailey or that bailey, or by blowing on them, or by, it's all just standard stuff. Andrew Nichol's cow went off its milk. That must have been her too. She was the death of John Dargy by laying on her hand of the small of his back. Amazing power. It's amazing power. Just think, you just use it for that.
I know.
If you had that power, you'd rule the world.
You wouldn't get strangled and then you have your body burnt, surely, if you had that. I just always come back to that. If they had these powers, why did they catch them? Like, why were they able to catch them?
It's like Lilla said, she died, and they put her in that box, and then they put chains around it, and then they buried her in the shore. And it's kind of like, if she was going to come back, would it not a bit earlier have been a good time to come back to do some of this stuff to you?
It's incredible. And I have to sort of maintain a bit of a rational mind, because it's so easy to read this stuff and just be raging, just constantly raging and at the injustice. And then you think, right, I have to be calm here and look at what was happening at the time. And I can be angry looking back, but at the time, these people who were persecuting these women and who were torturing them thought that they were doing this for the good of their entire community and the world, in fact. They were ridding the world of the devil, and that these people who were accused and tortured were the devil or the devil's handmaidens. I know there's some men, but interestingly in Forfar, it's fascinating because we have a couple of confessions from men. These men, they confessed, but only to a limited amount. So they didn't confess to a pact. They would confess that they met the devil and the devil spoke to them and the devil offered them something. But, oh no, mate, that was as far as it went. And the reason that these seem to be accepted is because the men are not tortured. All of the other ones mention about the women, and you can find out what conditions they were in and who was questioning them. So the women all have the pact with the devil, and it's of a sexual nature. So she has sex with the devil. These men are not even seemingly asked about that. And is that because the men who are questioning them don't believe that a man can have sexual intercourse with another man? Is that what they're talking? Is that what they're thinking? Mm-hmm. So I don't believe that these people were executed because they never confess to actually entering into the pact with the devil.
Do we know what happens with Isabel Smith?
She's executed. Yeah, there's a batch of them executed at the same time.
And that's exactly how they're dealt with, isn't it? A batch. Okay, we've got now 5 or 6. Let's just.
And it really fascinates me because it leads me on to the fact that they must have done it in batches because there was a shortage of executioners in Scotland. There was, in the 16th and 17th century, there was a recruitment crisis, is how it's described. And they couldn't get people to be executioners. And you think, well, I wonder why. So I think that it was much easier for everyone involved if they managed to get hold of an executioner, because in Forfar you'd have to go to Montrose for one, or to St Johnstone, which is Perth. You send men with horses and you bring them back, and he's getting paid for this. Donald, the executioner, is getting paid a new shirt, and he's being put up somewhere and treated to ale and tobacco and everything. And so they might not be able to get hold of him again. What if some other parish or county's got Donald the executioner? So maybe if we just get him to do them all at the same time.
Do you have any details of what those kind of mass executions were like? Was it sort of one at a time, or?
I believe they were hung, because I know it says strangled, and there's a bit of, what does strangled mean? But to garrote somebody is so physically difficult. It's incredibly difficult to do. And I know that
about this last night, actually.
Were you?
Yes, Claire and I were talking about various murders and how why you would slit somebody's throat over suffocating somebody with a pillow.
Yes.
Claire, you've gone on silent. Claire was saying that suffocating somebody is a lot of hard work because they kick and they fight it.
Might I point out, first of all, this isn't special knowledge.
Claire, I'm saying nothing.
And secondly, This is the chat we were having as Zoe and I were having Zoe's birthday drink. Just want to let you know.
It wasn't just us, there was others there as well.
What other kind of chat would you have at a birthday? I mean,
what we were actually talking about was sort of parallel to this issue, which was about, it started off talking about Lucy Worsley's podcast, Killers, and then we're talking about one episode where there's talk about a woman who kills her children because she's living in such poverty. And then we were talking about this issue about when women kill their children, not just because they're general murderers, but to save their children from something. So we talked about that very specialist thing and about the methods of murder with that one. So when people, circling back to the Witch of Scotland, have talked about strangulation, I did for a long time think, but how would that actually work? How did they do it? Was it somebody stood behind the accused and strangled them, or was it a garrote, or how did it work? But you're thinking, and this makes a lot more sense, that it was hangings.
Yes, and I have read that was the legal term in Scotland at the time for hanging. I don't know if Claire can sort of...
No idea. I'll certainly, it's something that I can certainly look at, but thankfully in my job I haven't had to know that.
You haven't had to look at too many stranglings.
No,
but no, physically, can you imagine from behind how strong the executioner is going to be? And he may be strong, but he's dealing with somebody who is, although they might actually want to die, your instincts take over, so your body fights. And this is meant to be in front of a crowd, and he's maybe got 5 or 6 of these to do. He physically couldn't do that.
No. And is there no financial trail about the building of... Yes, we have in Forfar's treasurer's accounts, and in other towns they use different measurements of rope. But in Forfar, it was like 30 fathom of rope, and that was their standard length. So that's not a garrote. No, that's a noose. So my understanding is that there's quite a scientific way of working out how long the rope has to be with a person's height and so on, because otherwise it's slower, it doesn't break the properly or whatever. So so do you think that they just kind of like flung a rope over a tree sort of a thing? Or would it be what we have in our culture, the idea that we have that there's like, a platform of some sort that they were hanged from?
I think that now Forfar had 2 sites for hangings. So they have Gallows Hill,
right,
and then they have up on Balmashanner, which is it's a big hill in Forfar. They have Gallows Shade, so that tells you that the gallows there as well. And I think each area was used for different types of crime.
Oh,
but the Forfar accused, they were hung in the playfield, which it's just right across from where the Gallows Hill is. So I think they were I think they were hung from a platform. I think they must have been, because that's the place where people used to gather, obviously, and is it just outside the town? Everybody would have been made to come and watch this. It's not a case of
come and watch.
They would have made to come and watch, because they're setting an example to the whole community that this is what's going to happen to you if you step outside our godly rules.
I was thinking more as people went along as an entertainment, rather than, I suppose that makes a lot more sense, that they were forced.
I have a first account of a hanging that took place in the 18th century. It's an eyewitness account, and it tells you in that one in Forfar that the community was made to turn out under sort of pain of fine or punishment. So, and you think, well, that has to be the reason they held these things in public, doesn't it? Is to set an example. But that's why in Forfar, again, I guess like lots of other communities, the town was so small, 1,000 people. Well, I've calculated that if you go roughly based on the number of kids in families and stuff, you're probably talking around about 250 households. So that's tiny. And they all live in this, it's such a small area of Forfar. It's around where our townhouse is now, a little bit into Castle Street and a little bit of the High Street. Hardly any houses, 250. Now, they would have either been related to or known quite intimately the people that were being hung. Would you want to go and watch that?
No.
I think you wouldn't. And I don't think these people were any different than us, really. I think our laws are different, but I think our human nature is not different. So if it repels us, I honestly believe it would have repelled them. So they were made to go and watch. And in the playfield, this is where they meet for fairs and they have entertainments, and that's where the witches were hung. And one I think I spoke to you about before, Griselle Simpson, she is actually buried there. I have a fantastic research assistant now. A young master's student approached me and said, look, would you maybe talk to me about this and help me a little bit? And as you guys know, I'm autistic and he's autistic. And we get on like an absolute house on fire.
Fantastic.
So we turned it into, from one little meeting to we're doing so many things, and we may talk about that later, doing so many things around Forfar. So Sean Wilson is this fantastic young man's name, and we are working on a witch trail. So together we've pieced together all the areas around Forfar, and he's producing a map even as we speak with wonderful technology. So soon people will be able to get a map, and they're going to be able to go around Forfar, and they're going to be able to stand in these spots.
Fantastic.
So we want a plaque there's a wall up by the old playfield, and there's a plaque mentioning that it used to be the old railway sidings. So we think, listen, if you can have a plaque for that, you can have a plaque for Gazelle Simpson.
Yeah.
And it's not too close to the houses that would affect their house prices or anything, but it would just be, very, very unusual to have a witch buried. And she's there somewhere. So I think she was only 18.
Oh.
And she was the subject of lynch mob. And you think, let's have a little plaque up there.
As far as I remember, Claire, is that the only person that we've heard that is buried that was found guilty of being a witch?
Yeah, we know obviously of Lilith Adey, who was still to go to trial, and that's why I think they didn't know what to do with her body. But this is the only person that we know that's been convicted. So it's maybe somewhere for us to go and visit using Judith's map.
Come on the trail. Yeah, and it's the only one I've ever found. And she was convicted, but it would be illegally because the commission hadn't come back yet. And you can tell that after a lull in witch trials, the last lot really had been around about 1649. So there's not a lot of people who remember are around in 1661 to remember how to do it. And there's practicalities involved here. How do you do a proper witch trial? How do you do a proper witch execution? And they couldn't wait, so they just hung her from the Tolbooth window.
So she'd gone through an actual trial, but she'd been convicted, so they knew she was a witch. But in order to be allowed then to go into the sentencing process, they still had to get authority to do that, and they hadn't yet got the authority.
That's right. So they need to get, so the church deals with it until they get the confession. And then once they've got the confession, the state takes over. And it's the state laws that come in. And the crime for witchcraft is, hanging and burning and stuff like that. So they have to they say, like, we've got this woman in, we've questioned her, we've been very nice, and she's admitted to these things, which means she's very naughty and we must get rid of her. And then the Privy Council says, no problem, you've used due process, here's your commission. And while you're at it, they'll name a few people, but in some of the Forfar ones, it's like, okay, we want to execute Isabel Shirey and Catherine Porter and Isabel Smith, right? That's great. You can go ahead and do that. But actually, if within the next wee while you find some more witches, this still stands for a little while.
So sort of like gives you a window. If you've got some other people to execute, just execute them as well.
Yes, yeah. Don't bother coming back to us. We'll say this might stand for 2 months. Save us all the administration.
And basically, what they were doing by having to go back there was they were trying to cut down the amount of killings that were taking place because people were so gung ho and excited and keen to kill the witches that they were doing it without the proper supervision. And the numbers were just growing exponentially. The difficulty is, and that's the difficulty for the numbers of the witch trials, is that then that only gives us very rough approximations of who's been killed.
Don't have all the names. Yeah, that's right. Now I found, I'll tell you about what Sean and I found last week because it relates to the numbers. So I have 52 women in Forfar accused between 1661 and half of 1662. So that's 52 of them. And I had names on my list there's 3 names, Jeannie Laux, Christian Lawson, and Jeannie Thornton. And I knew I'd seen them somewhere, but I reference and cross-reference and cross-reference the cross-reference until I'm certain that these are the names. Now, there's going to be more than this because of what we just talked about there, saying, you know, if you want to bung a few more on to the commission, feel free. We might not have the names of these people. But right now we're at 52. So Sean and I were in archives last week trawling through all the original documents, and I looked at one of them and I said, Sean, there's not a transcript for this. This is an A4 sheet of paper, which is uncommon in size. That's going to have a lot of names on it. So there's no transcription of this. So he looks through the list and he said, no, definitely no transcription. I don't even think it's mentioned in their catalogue. I don't think it was in the catalogue either, but I'm not 100% sure. So we are sitting there with this 306-year-old document and we're going, oh, wow. I mean, I think I posted a photograph somewhere, possibly on my Facebook, of our faces. It was just one of these moments where we're the first people to possibly be looking at this in terms of transcription. Couldn't believe it, just flabbergasted. And that
360 years, nobody had touched this document.
It's in an envelope. It's in a acid-free, sort of clear envelope thing, but it's not mentioned in the Society of Antiquities confessions, and it's not mentioned in the Forfar Archives transcriptions. So we're sitting there thinking, we're looking at a document that nobody started on yet. This is gold dust. And that, it's in there. So I was able to read some of the names. Between the two of us, we were able to go, that says, and that's where I find Jeannie Laux, Kristen Lawson, and Jean Thornton. So they were there. But I'd not seen that document, but I just couldn't find my original source. It was like, well, you get better than the original source. Here's the original. So yeah, I'm sitting at 52 names.
And Judith, how many names were you sitting at before? Like, just to give an example of how many your research alone has unearthed.
It was 42 before. I mean, and I know that we're going to find more. So, if you've got 12 women executed, say, in a town, you can pretty much guarantee that's just the absolute tip of the iceberg. And then after, because things change in 1662, because there's the Privy Council take action, I think it's in April 1662. Attitudes have changed. I don't know if the Privy Council just thinks, wait a minute here, we're being inundated with commissions. There's something going on, and they know that there's going to be torture, but they say that in one of the Forfar confessions of June 1662, a woman called Margaret Ritchie, who came from Inverarity, which is a village that's just 5 miles outside Forfar. I mean, Forfar was the judicial centre, so if you're accused in Inverarity or just up the road in Cortaca or somewhere like that, you will come to Forfar to be tried or questioned. So we're the administrative centre. And they mention in Marjorie Ritchie's confession that of what confessions should be made by her judicially, and that at the time of her confession, she was of sound judgment, no ways distracted, tortured, or under any earnest desire to die. So basically they're saying, look, we have not tortured this woman. We conform to the laws of the realm, and she's still confessed. So,
but of course, torture did not include keeping people awake.
Oh, I mean, where do you start with the torture?
Absolutely. So when they say we haven't tortured you, according to their understanding of torture at the time, they hadn't tortured her. That might be absolutely true. But what they might have done was, we get back to why they needed to use the candles. They kept them awake day and night for days on end until they finally confessed. And they called those free confessions.
Oh, absolutely.
They would then say, so were you with the devil? Yes, I was with the devil. And did you have sex with him? Yes, I had sex with him, because you would do anything for it to stop and to be allowed to sleep.
Absolutely. And when the the wake with the candle, keeping them awake with the candles did stop, they are shuttered in, so they're completely in the dark then, and that's disorientating. And these women are hungry, they're cold, they're disorientated, they're sleep deprived. A lot of them have been stripped. Well, they've all been stripped and shaved, and that's utterly humiliating. And they've gone through all of this. And, you know, Marjorie Ritchie, although it says she's of sound judgment, some of these people believed they were witches. And, you know, witches today is completely different. So you've got witches back then is all about a pact with the devil and all the rest of it. Witches today are akin to our charmers, the charmers back then. So did she identify, is she just one of them? But, you know, she's been made to think that what she's doing is bad.
Yeah. Identifying as witches or identifying themselves as witches, do you mean that they would be saying, because they were being interrogated in relation to witchcraft and because they were charmers and did spells, that they may come to believe that, in fact, oh, well, I must be a witch?
Absolutely.
That kind of question.
Yeah, absolutely.
The women I asked, can you be a witch and not know it?
Yeah.
Who are being asked. Is that the kind of thing you
think there's a lot of that going on. And I have documentary evidence from a couple of sources that using some words from the catechism or using some Catholic prayers, that was deemed to be a spell. So if you're doing that, and a lot of people, I mean, on Lucy Worsley Investigates, you see that she's taken into an archive and she's shown all the little amulets and things that people carried round with them. And often that would be given to someone and a little prayer would be said and it's given to them, and that's for their protection, or that's for fertility, or that's for whatever. But they're using a bit of a prayer or a bit of the catechism, and that's deemed to be a spell. So if you put that back to a woman who's sleep deprived and disorientated and starving and cold and in pain because she's been made to stand up for hours on end with the, you know, the bridle on her face and the all this sort of stuff, that is going to mess with your mind. So, did you give wee Jeannie Smith an amulet and you said a spell at the same time, and then her neighbour dropped dead, the one that she'd had a fight with? Well, right, well, I did give her a token, and I did say something, but we've done that for years. My granny did it. My granny's granny did it. Ah, well, that's a spell, So by their definition, she might think she's a witch.
And there would be that power imbalance where you've got people of, at that time, a higher status, when those sorts of things were incredibly important, learned people telling you, a person who was not learned for the most part, and a person whom you would look up to and respect as a senior person in your community, yes, you are a witch.
Yes, you might not know it, but trust me, love.
And the love would be definitely there or implicit at the end, yeah.
Yeah. And so it just shows that in 1662 something is happening, and even the Privy Council is saying, whoa, come on.
Well, of course, as we know, 1661 was the real peak of the witchcraft accusations. And when we were going down to London, the British Library was going to do an exploration of witchcraft trials in England, for the whole of England. And I looked at how many people were executed as witches in the whole of Scotland in that 1 year. And it was more than England had in their entire witchcraft accusations.
Yeah, that's right.
Just to put that into context.
It's the Presbyterianism in Scotland.
Well, we need to get more on that. And that is maybe time for Judith's third podcast with us, because I'm sure we absolutely
so much more to tell you. But yes.
I know. This is the thing. We need you on for like a 3-parter. Just at present, you've told us about the work that you're doing and the map that you're producing. Now, we know you've got lots of fingers and lots of pies. Is there anything else you're able to give us any snippets on before we go?
One thing is, I seem to have found where one of our banished witches ended up. So that's very exciting. I'm involved in stuff with Brechin. Brechin had a memorial, I think you mentioned that they've got a stone there, the Brecon 2020 committee.
That was the first time we met in person, although I felt like I already knew you because we've been talking and chatting so much through the pandemic.
Yeah, so that's fascinating, and so there's stuff going on in Brecon. They want everything. They want tourism. They want safeguarding their museum. They want everything. So I'll be helping with that. And there's a talk coming up in the Methven Museum in Forfar, because there's a whole load of events that Sean and I have been working with community and the local church, etc., and the council. There's a whole load of events we've got coming up in October and November in Forfar. So there'll be more about that. But the Methven talk, I think I roped you guys into coming along to that. So that should really be very good, I think. So
when's that one again?
20th of October. It's a Saturday.
Yes.
2 p.m.
Have I put that into my diary?
Anyone who wants to come along to the Methven Museum in Forfar, I'm not sure if they'll put e-tickets up, or I don't know how they'll do it yet.
That'll be brilliant.
I'd hoped it would just be like the three of us do right now, but in person.
Yeah.
And then we'll get Sean at the end to chair a question and answer session with the three of us.
Mm-hmm.
He's up for doing that. So just so much. Just so much. And I'm going to be on the TV again.
Are you?
I am, and that's going to be on Channel 4, but I can't really tell you anything about that yet.
Okay.
But with a well-known person is going to be doing a documentary series, and people may be surprised at the person.
I know what that is. I know. Yeah. I remember now. Yes. Yeah.
So this man is a very, very intelligent man, and I have watched a documentary with him before that he did in Scotland. And I really liked the way he did it. So cool. I've been asked to go on and talk about James VI and the witch hunts.
Brilliant.
For that.
Fantastic.
So
I think it will be brilliant TV for the future, Judith. And before you become a superstar and go to Hollywood, can we put it in for part 3 for podcast listeners?
Absolutely. Please do, because I've got 10 million tons of stuff to tell you. So yes.
That's good. I like this. I love the fact, though, that we've got somebody who is local to us and is working away at the, just chipping through everything through the archives and has the imagination to think, right, where am I going to look next? What does that look like that might connect to? Because you are a kind of a beacon to the people that listen to the podcast that want to do their own research. I know for a fact it's given lots of people confidence to look in their own area. And because you're so close to where Claire and I are, it just makes it so relevant and real that these were real people and not, just stories in a book. They're actual people that you're uncovering. So I think it's wonderful. I'm really glad of it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, just to reiterate again that, okay, I'm educated to a certain level, but don't be put off if you can't understand old documents. You can do paleography courses online, with the University of Glasgow and stuff.
Yeah.
Or just get a book on Scottish handwriting of that time period.
And again, just to encourage our listeners, use the libraries. We need to use them, keep using them, because if we don't use them, we'll lose them. So we need to just keep using them, and just remember that libraries are free. They're free.
Yeah, please visit your local museum. I mean, the staff at the Methven in Forfar are so enthusiastic and they're just wonderful. They'll help you with anything. I think the lady's called Pauline Lowe in there. I hope I haven't got that wrong. I'm sure it's a name. But use your archives, get into your museums, because they're trying to close them down. Mm-hmm. And use your libraries, please, because you can go in and you can find books that will teach you how to do this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to pay for them, and academic books are tremendously expensive, and that's what the libraries are there for. And if they don't have the book that you need, I mean, obviously I'm teaching grannies how to suck eggs here, but you can say to them, I need this book from such and such, and they get it for you for free. So you can use whatever you want there, and people will organise it for you, and they're so helpful generally.
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely. Shout out to librarians and archive staff. They're so pleased when people come in asking them for stuff. I remember I went up to Orkney and asked about the archives there, the witch archives there. And she was so upset that I was leaving. She was like, even if I had a half day, I'd be able to get you all this stuff. And Orkney has incredibly good witchcraft records.
Yes.
And she was so keen. She was like, just an afternoon, just give me a day and I will have them all available for you. So I've made it my intention the next time I head up there is to tell her in advance and so she can look those things out. But archivists are so excited to show people those types of documents if you're looking for them.
They really, really are. And they're not just, they're not just administrators or clerical staff. These people have a wealth of knowledge, and they're just so desperate to share it, and they will help you with anything they can.
Well, Judith, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you as usual. Glad we got that on I was going to say on tape. How old are we? We digitally recorded that Judith's going to give us more chat before she heads to Hollywood. And we can't wait to speak to you again soon. I'm sure in real life, IRL, as they say, we'll be meeting up with you very soon. So in the meantime, thanks for all your work, Judith, and take care.
Lovely to speak to you.
Thanks so much for joining us again with the Witches of Scotland podcast. It means so much for us to have all these different listeners all over the world, and we love it when you get in touch. So please do get in touch with us on our different social medias. The places we chat the most are probably on Twitter and a wee bit on Facebook, but Facebook's really just a page. So for actual chit chat and communication, please do get in touch with us on Twitter, because we do love to hear about what people are doing. And it means that we can then share with our listeners if there's stuff that's going on in your area you want people to know about, or indeed you want to get in touch with other people. One thing that we had this week, Claire and I did an event down in Kilmarnock this week where we spoke at the Dick Institute with Sarah Sheridan, who listeners will remember wrote the book Where Are the Women? So we had a nice chat with her on stage with a really lovely audience that came out on a really pretty dreich night in Kilmarnock to sit in the library. Although I suppose now at least you're going to be warm if you go out to a public place, I guess. But we had a really nice chat and we met a lady afterwards, didn't we, Claire?
Yes, we in fact met two people that were of interest.
Yes.
We met a lady, and that lady was wondering whether or not there were any people in the local area interested in finding more about that area and about the witchcraft trials that happened around them. So we said that we would give a shout out on the podcast if anyone's interested in the Kilmarnock area in relation to witch trials and what went on there, and wants to speak to somebody else who's also interested in that, perhaps speak to one another online and have chats about that, do get in contact with us and we'll try and put them together. And the other person we met was quite a lovely gentleman.
Yes, and we had a lovely chat with him about what had happened in Ireland and about why there were less accusations of witchcraft and less witch trials in Ireland. Of course, we've done an episode about that many moons ago, but we're hopeful there's actually a really interesting researcher and historian from Ireland that we're going to get on to have a chat with him. We'll shed a wee bit more light on that situation. But it was lovely having a chat with people, and you can see people kind of like us, where they hear information and go, oh, that's really interesting. And then it opens up a whole new avenue of research and interest. So that was really lovely. So it's always really nice to meet people. Yeah. And we've got a couple of things, like we've already told you about Forfar and Peoples this weekend. I'm also in Portobello, at the Portobello Bookshop on Thursday, talking to Mary Kidd about her new book, We're All Witches. And we'll be doing more about that later. We'll do another episode where we get Mary on again.
Now, just to let people know, Zoe, that is Thursday, the 20th of October in Portobello.
In Portobello, and I believe there are tickets left, so you might, by the time this goes out, you might have a chance, but otherwise we're going to be interviewing Mary and we'll be putting out an episode with Mary to talk about it, because you'll remember probably that We Are All Witches is the book that came out of the Heel and Harrow project, where Heel and Harrow, who we talked to as well, talked about their project, and they commissioned Mary, I believe, to write stories of people that were accused in different locations in Scotland. And of course, they were partially inspired by our campaign. So it's really amazing to see the kind of the snowball effect of these different people getting together and then working creatively and making these wonderful parts that then exist in the culture, so that we know that the story will be talked about truthfully and in engaging ways, so that we know our own history, which after all is a really big driver for our campaign in the first place.
Absolutely. And we love finding out new things. A listener this week also sent us a picture of the Tapestry of Scotland, which has a part set aside for witchcraft trials. There's a woman set in the middle of, on a pyre with sort of the flames lapping at her feet and accusations around it. And I hadn't seen that before. So I really love it when groups interact with one another and let us know what's happening, because we're a small country. But if we work together, we can really make a difference to the history of women in Scotland, and I'm so pleased to see that.
Absolutely. And this is something that we always come back to. The communication strategy that we have, if you can call it a strategy, that sounds like you and I ever sat down and planned anything. But our sort of strategy is that we see ourselves as kind of an umbrella organization or a conduit or something, where different disparate groups get together and we can say, oh, such and such is working on this, why don't you talk to them, or telling people about what's happening in a different area, or it sparks conversations. Or, you know, I think that what happened with Peoples partly came out of a conversation that was sparked partially by the podcasts. So it's just really nice to see people then making these really positive connections in their communities and in the broader community. And really, where it's so nice that everybody's all working together for this really important part of Scottish history, but also, as we would argue, for Scotland's future. You know, Sarah Sheridan said this week at our event, and, you know, again, we've said this many times, if you don't know your past, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. So we feel it's really important in Scotland that we do recognise those things. I've got one other thing, Claire, that's just occurred to me that I just wanted to mention. I know that we mention this a lot, but I think it's important that we keep talking about this. What's happening just now for Leo Igwe in Malawi and Nigeria and various other countries that he's active in is really horrifying, and they definitely need more international support. So if you're on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, go and have a look at advocacy for alleged witches and see what Leo Igwe is doing, because he is really, really fighting a tough fight over there, I would have to say, in various countries where accusations seem to be getting more kind of widespread in some areas. It's quite frightening. So definitely it's worth going and engaging with that and seeing why the campaign has a modern relevance. And really appallingly and sadly, it really does have a modern relevance.
Yeah, thanks so much for mentioning Leo. That was a great shout there, Zoe. He is himself suffering from threats because he is standing up for people who are accused of witchcraft. So what happens is that people are turning on him and saying, we don't think you should be in our community if you're effectively trying to protect us from these witches. Now, Leo doesn't worry about curses or anything like that because he does not believe in these things. He's just trying to protect people. But any light that we can shine on that and help him is much appreciated by him. So if you can follow him on Facebook, follow him on Twitter, I'm sure he would appreciate that greatly.
Yeah, great. Okay.
We'd better head off now, Zoe, because we've got maths homework and raccoon training.
Don't even.
To be honest,
the raccoons to count. It's actually there's more chance of success for those guys getting their heads around it than me, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, why don't we try and teach ourselves to count first, Zoe?
I can count after a fashion. It just takes me time, and I've got my own unique methods for doing it that probably wouldn't help in a classroom scenario. But you know, it's just I'm better at words.
We're words people.
Words, not numbers. Okay, all right. Good talking to you, Claire.
You too. See you in a fortnight's time, Zoe.
Yes, so we should mention that we're going to try and up our output again to every 2 weeks. Otherwise, we're just never going to get these podcasts out there.
We have so many people, and we always say this, we always apologise. We've got so many people that we want to speak to who are on a list that we are getting through.
We just need to say again, just for the record, there's only Claire and me. So we don't have a committee. We don't have any helpers. It's just the two of us. And Claire's job is ridiculously busy and very exciting and glamorous just now. And my job is just nuts.
Your job is ridiculously busy, and you have children to look after as well. I've only got the 2 mutts.
I described them as children, hardly even human at this point, I tell you. I'm not even going to start going on about that because I'll...
Zoe, maybe we should put the raccoons in charge of our diary. We might get more done.
I think I might just adopt the raccoons as my children, and then I would just be happier. Don't tell my children I said that. I don't mean it. I love them really. Just raccoons are more biddable, and everybody knows how non-biddable raccoons are. Anyway, ciao ciao. I'll speak to you later. Bye.
If you'd like to learn more about the Witches of Scotland, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up for our mailing list at www.witchesofscotland.com to keep updated with the campaign. On that site, you'll be able to find how to link with us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.